questions. So at that point, please feel free to unmute yourself if you're comfortable doing so, or you could use the chat function to pop your questions in. And we will, of course, have time at the end where we would invite questions, a little bit of a discussion at the end. So welcome everyone. People continue to join. That's great. We've got a good number of folks here. So welcome to today's workshop, Data Management Planning in the College Sector. This is brought to you by HAR, the Heads of Applied Research, and Ontario College's RDM Community of Practice. It's a collaborative project that we're really excited about. And we are very grateful to Compute Ontario for providing funding for this series of workshops. And we're hoping to develop some modules as well. So this is the second in a series of 3 workshops. Christina, next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. So we are, of course, meeting on a virtual platform, but important for us to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands that we each call home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. I am presenting today in London, Ontario, and I'd like to respectfully acknowledge this land as the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. If you would like to take a moment to do the same in the chat, please, you're encouraged to do so. Next slide, Christina. So allow me to take a moment to introduce ourselves today. So presenters, I am Donna Sevenpifer. I work as the Faculty Research Advisor at Fanshawe College. I'm a librarian, but I've been embedded in the research office for a few years now. And my colleague Joanna Blair is here as well. She is the Scholarly Communication and Liaison Librarian at Centennial. Kaylin Caspery is here. She's STEM and Data Librarian at Durham. And Rosemarie Jolinar, Research, Data Management, and Applied Research at Humber College. And we can't forget Christina DeRoche, so Director of Research at Canadore. We've been calling her our workshop producer because she'll be doing a lot of behind-the-scenes assistance today, launching polls and chiming in whenever she feels fit. And I sees fit. And I should mention as well that this session will be recorded. I forgot to mention that as a disclaimer at the start. Again, thank you, Compute Ontario. So let's launch our first poll then, Christina.
So we want to know, folks, what best matches your job title at the moment. So please submit your response to that. You'll find that all of these will be in the chat in terms of the results. There you go. Awesome. So looks like a good portion of administrators and research staff. Nice to also see some librarians and library folks and some other category of other. Do you want to launch the next one, Donna?
I don't think I can launch the polls on my end, Christina.
Okay, I'll do the next one for us. So here's the next poll for everybody. Did you attend our session 1, RDM and the college sector? Awesome, a good 82% who did. It's changing. 70% saying yes, 28% saying no. So it's nice to see some new faces. Great.
All right, next slide then. So if you weren't able to attend workshop 1, hopefully you were able to view the webinar recording that we shared in the slides as well. A very brief recap for you as well on what we covered in workshop 1. So we provided an overview of RDM, addressing the different types of research data created and collected at our various institutions. We outlined the many benefits of RDM best practices, both for researchers and institution. We explored the research data lifecycle, and at the end, we considered how we can initiate and or engage in RDM discussions with key partners, for instance, at our own institutions. For instance, we talked about how we might position ourselves within RDM support frameworks currently or in the future. Could we identify potential gaps? And what are some of the considerations moving forward to better support RDM? So I am also going to mention what we're hoping to cover in this session. So we're hoping to provide for you today, of course, an introduction as to data management planning, as the title suggested. We'll be including some very important guiding RDM principles, including FAIR and how to address sensitive data. We will be talking about data management plans and showing you how to actually create one. And we'll do this doing a live demo, show you how to access templates, identify the key components of a DMP, and share a college-specific exemplar rather. Similar to workshop one, we will at the end pose some questions as to how you may wish to address support for data management planning at your local institution. And as I said, we've built in a question and answer period. Next slide. At this point, I'm going to be turning it over to Joanna.
Thanks, Donna. So this is a slide to connect us back to the tri-agency policy on research data management, because this policy really is the driver of all of these conversations we're having about data management plans and RDM. So these are the three pillars of the tri-agency policy on RDM, and I like to point to the second two. Okay, so data management plans and data deposit are the two that are really the responsibility of the researchers. So the researcher is responsible for creating a data management plan that talks about how they will treat their data throughout the research life cycle, with the end goal of hopefully getting to clean data that they will then deposit. And the first pillar is the institutional strategy, where the institution is responsible for laying out a plan for how they will support their researchers as they go through these other two pillars. And obviously today we're going to be focusing on the data management plan, but that's how it all fits together and why we are having this conversation. Next slide, please. So I thought we would start this with a bit of a knowledge check to connect with what we already know about DMP. So Christina, if you want to launch the first one, these are true or false questions. The tri-agency RDM policy requires a data management plan for all project submissions. True or false?
Ooh, and it's an even 50-50 split on this one. This is really interesting. Okay.
Great. All right, we'll leave it there. And I have to look at my answer sheet. This one is in fact false. So you get nervous when you're in front, when you're at the front. So I know this is false, and in fact, I'll show you wording where it says the requirements for DMP will be selective across certain funding opportunities, and it will be phased in after 2022. So there's no language in the policy that says it will be all funding opportunities. So we will move on to. Okay, so the next one, true or false, a DMP is only required for research dealing with sensitive data.
All right, so good number of false there.
Fantastic. Okay, and I might have given a hint to this one in the answer to the first one, but yes, you're correct. I would say DMP is best practice for all research at the beginning of every research project. And particularly important with regard to sensitive data, you really need to think about how you will treat it. But no, it is only required for certain funding opportunities. It's not specific to what kind of research you are doing. And the last question. True or false? Colleges have access to an online tool which will guide researchers through the DMP process.
Lots of
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well, lots of true. I think we're gonna stick with that. And yeah, so that's really great to to see that so many people are aware of this resource. So we'll be talking about a tool called the DMP Assistant later on, and Rose is going to walk you through how to interact with that tool, and it's freely available to all researchers. So I'm really happy to see so many people are already aware of that tool. All right, next slide. So this is the wording from the tri-agency RDM policy, where you can see for certain funding opportunities, the agency will require data management plans to be submitted. And I should have highlighted that last sentence there that says the DMPs will be considered in the adjudication process. So just sort of a note to folks producing the DMPs and submitting them. This is part of your evaluation. And because the tri-agency is, is the leader in Canada, I could see this language appearing in other funding opportunities as well. But that remains to be seen. We'll see if that happens. Okay, next slide, please. And in terms of why DMPs are important, so this, the policy aside, DMPs really can help the researcher. And one of the ways it can do this is as an opportunity to think about your data at the beginning of the project. Think about how you're going to be consistent with nomenclature and security access. So it's a chance for you to evaluate your current practices and how you can be more effective, how you can make it more secure, more intuitive. And the end goal, of course, is planning how you will preserve and share your data. So that's the end goal of the policy, but really such a great gift to the world to be able to put your clean and usable data out there for others to use. And of course, it helps protect from costly disasters. So I know everybody on the call has been through a moment where their essay or their report or their data has disappeared, and it's an awful feeling. And you know the kind of time that is involved in replacing that. So having those processes in place early on, how you're going to back up your data, will hopefully avoid those kinds of disasters. And as I mentioned already, this is widely recognized as best practice in RDM, starting with that planning early on in the research life cycle. So I think here I have one more slide. There we go. And this, I'm not showing this video. I am going to add the link to it, but this is a very funny 4.5-minute video from the New York University Health Sciences Library that goes through some of the problems with poor research data management. If you have a chance, give it a watch. But I will hand it over to Kaylin. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, this video is really fantastic. So I'm going to second that recommendation that you check it out on your own time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some RDM principles and how they intersect. So I'll start with talking about the RDM principles in the tri-agency. So I have another quote here. But basically, it's noting that the tri-agency outlines some principles behind research data management requirements. So this quote, again, is taken from the tri-agency research data management policy, and it's noting that research data collected through the use of public funds should be responsibly and securely managed. So tri-agency is supporting this research, and so this is sort of the what they're looking for. As well, the research data that is collected through the use of these public funds should be available for reuse by others where ethical, legal, and commercial obligations allow. So it's important to note that the policy is reflecting that there are situations, those ethical, legal, and commercial obligations that would make data not available for reuse. So it's not a blanket statement, which is often well known, but something that's helpful to just highlight here. And the second part of the quote states that agencies support FAIR principles for research data management and stewardship. So FAIR refers to findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I'll speak more about the FAIR principles in the next few slides. Slide, please. Thank you. So here is sort of a graphic. I'll try to give it another way of understanding those FAIR principles. So here are the FAIR for data management. So as I mentioned, F is for findable, A is for accessible, I is for interoperable, and R is for reusable. So you can see, generally, we want to be able to find it. The little magnifying glass there is helpful. Accessible, so can other people look for it? Interoperable, what does it work with? And then reusable there as well. So I'll go into greater detail about each part of the FAIR acronym on my next few slides. The next slide, please. So findability. So this one's pretty intuitive. To be able to reuse data, it must be easily located. So data should be findable. So researchers who might be looking for it in future should be able to find it pretty easily. It also helps for researchers and the investigators working on a particular project that they will be able to find it again as well. Next slide, please. Next is accessibility. So once the data has been found, it needs to be accessible. In this context, accessibility is referring to considerations like authorization and authority. Basically, once you have found the data, is it all locked up? What is the plan for making the data practically usable and accessible? That can also refer to what programs are being used, where it's being stored. Will it be able to be easily used in future? This is one that it's often helpful to think a little bit sort of really longitudinally. Oftentimes what seems really accessible and easy right now, not necessarily the same in the next coming years, decades. Next slide is interoperability. So the data must be able to work with other data systems, applications, and workflows. So it's best when considering research data management to consider how that research will exist outside of its initial purpose and platforms. And finally, reuse. So the aim is to make it as easy as possible to reuse that data in the future, either by the original investigators, others, for reproducibility, and so on. So this reuse is achieved through really sound metadata practices. So metadata refers to the information about the data itself. So that would be things like file names, the data dictionary, data sharing protocols, and so on. Slide, please. All right, sensitive data. So next I'll speak a little bit about sensitive data. Please note that our third session will cover this in greater detail. So this will be an introduction to the concept, some ideas around what sort of sensitive data you or other researchers you're supporting might be encountering. The sensitive data requires a special research data management considerations. So it might not be as appropriate, for example, to make sensitive data available in open data repositories. It sort of goes without saying that sensitive data has those additional things to consider, and that doesn't exclude you from creating a research data management plan by any means. Just another aspect to look at. The sensitive data can include things like human participant data, location data, proprietary data, as well as indigenous data. So human participant data sort of be biographical data, biological materials, location data, looking at sort of vulnerable species, sensitive archaeological sites, and proprietary data, so protected intellectual property, trade secrets, financial information, and things like that. And then indigenous data. So I'll talk a little bit in greater detail about indigenous data in the next few slides. Slide, please. So while an in-depth discussion of best practices in regards to Indigenous data and Indigenous data management planning is out of the scope of this presentation, the Tri-Agency does address...
Come here.
Sorry, I think someone might have their mic unmuted. Yes, so as I was noting, the Indigenous data, not something we're going to go into a deep dive today, but it is noted and highlighted in the Tri-Agency policy, so I'll talk a little bit about that and some frameworks around Indigenous data as well that I'd like to draw your attention to. So Indigenous data considerations come from the Tri-Agency Research Data Management Policy. There's some key points I've highlighted on the slide, but sort of talking about data management principles being developed and approved by these communities and on the basis of free and prior informed consent. So this is something that will be really tailored to the particular communities that researchers are working with and that this data is coming from. Next slide, please. So more here from the Tri-Agency on Indigenous data with an emphasis on the principles of OCAP, which I'll talk about in a little bit in my coming slides as a potential model, as well as this emphasis that one model might not fit the needs and values of distinct communities, collectives, and organization. So it's really personalized to the data and the communities that you're working with. So the policy states, looking at considerations of Indigenous data sovereignty, as well as data collection, ownership, protection, use, and sharing. The principles of ownership, control, access, and possession, OCAP, are one model of First Nations data governance, but this model does not necessarily respond to the needs and values of distinct communities, collectives, and organizations. So agencies recognize, that's being the tri-agencies, that distinctions-based approaches are needed to ensure that the unique rights, interests, and circumstances are affirmed and implemented. Next slide, please. So when looking at those special considerations for Indigenous data, researchers may consider utilizing those first principles of OCAP, which were noted in that quote. So OCAP stands for ownership, control, access, and possession. So there's lots of information to be learned about the principles of OCAP. Is a really great course offered by the First Nations Information Governance Center called the Fundamentals of OCAP. So it comes highly recommended as a resource to learn more about the First Nations principles of OCAP, either for yourself or to recommend to researchers that are engaging with Indigenous data. Another consideration would be the international CARE principles for Indigenous data governance. The CARE principles were developed by the Global Indigenous Data Alliance, GIDA, and that acronym stands for Collective Benefit, Authority to Control, Responsibility, and Ethics. Next slide, which I believe is a question slide. So just thought we'd pause here for a moment to see if there's any questions that have come up. Feel free to type them into the chat and or raise your hand. Here's an opportunity.
I'm monitoring the chat function right now, so please feel free to put in your questions now. Also, if there are questions that arise during the presentation, feel free to use the chat function as well, and we'll be monitoring that. Not seeing any questions at this point. So oh, Tanya.
Hi there.
Hey.
I think you're at least on my screen, it says this chat is muted. So I'm not sure if you have to do something on your end to sort of unlock the chat
Oh.
feature. Yeah. Yeah, I do have a question actually. So thanks so much for the presentation. And I noted the CAP and I took a look at the CAP training, and right now it says that it's on pause. So I'm not
Yes.
sure if you have any insights of perhaps when it might be opening up, or do we just go through some of the material that because they have good material on their website already, but it's not a formal course.
Yes, I can speak to that just because I happen to have been in a presentation, I think it was last week, with some members of that organization that were mentioning they're just revamping their course, sort of updating it a little bit, and it should be offered again in March. So they've closed registration for, I think, January and February. Hope to be offering it again in March. And I believe it's rolling admittance every month. Yeah, I've taken it myself. I highly recommend it.
Okay, well, we can continue to move forward, and if there's still questions, use the chat function. If it's not working, just raise your hand at the end of the presentation and save that question. Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay.
All right, this is for me. Thanks, Christina, for helping to be my navigator. All right, so this is the overview of what the DMP Assistant looks like. I've put the link there and we'll put it in the chat as well. If everyone would like to open it up, we can do this exercise together, or you can do it on your own time. Next slide, please, Christina. All right, so here's the 8. We'll go back to the previous slide. Okay, just want to do a quick overview of where you have to put your data management plan glasses on. There's 9 or 8 very important things to think about. I also want everybody to have the research questions right beside them. When they're doing a data management plan, it's not something that comes out of the air. It's actually speaking directly to your research questions. So what are you collecting and why? So the why is your research questions. Why are you doing this study? your metadata. That's how you're going to identify it. You're going to store it. You're going to have access to only a team that you are working with. It's not open data. And then you want to make sure that your data is ethically sourced and that you've considered all the legal compliance issues that could be there. And then preservation, how will you preserve it? And remember that data, you're responsible for it. If you're the principal investigator, you could be responsible for it for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or up to 100. I've seen some studies that are that long for data preservation. Sharing, reuse, and then the responsibility that I talked about, and also the costs. There's always costs that could be part of this. Next slide, please, Christina. Now, Christina's going to be the driver of this demo, and I'm just going to talk it through with everyone. So I'll just wait till the demo starts up. And then if you have your website open, you can go along, or we can, because this is recorded, you can come back to this demonstration when you have time to do it. Okay, so this is less than 3 minutes, everyone, so no suffering for too long here. So we're just going to see when the data management website opens. You can make a large screen of that possibly. So just plug in DMP Assistant. This is the first thing you're going to see. You're going to see the DMP Assistant there. This is your main page. Now you're going to be able to see at the very top the toggling there of templates that you can search and look and discover. I want everyone to have that guide looking through. Now you can log in with your name, your login, and your password. If you haven't created an account, go ahead and make one, and take a look at the organizations. I plugged in 3 colleges, and there's Sheridan, and it comes up, and then Humber I've put in. There's Humber College, and also I put in Fanshawe. So these 3 colleges are there, but your institution may not be there. So if it's not, just plug in other. And then when you put in other, just click on other organizations. That will allow you to go in with your and create an account. So the next step is I've already created my account, and there I am, Humber College. I've signed in. Here, this is what you see on the dashboard. You can see that I've been working on a few DMPs now, and this is a work in progress. And then here I want to start a new plan. What I would recommend everybody do, put in do a mock plan. And then indicate here that it's a no research organization at this time. And then just click on the Portage template. It's a really good one to work in. And then once you have that, then you're able to be able to start your data management plan basically from scratch, but always be able to go back to it and make changes and share. So you're going to put in here, mine's called Rose's Plan. I'm going to put in my abstract, start my project date start and end date. If you have, you don't put it in if it's not done. The funding number, if you have it. If you don't, that's fine. And then just toggle across the top here. And then you're going to be able to see the template. And here is the fun part. You'll be able to put in all of your data, your information rather, in each of the sections of your data management plan. So you just click into data collection. How are you going to do your data collection? And there you go. You can cut and paste documentation metadata, your storage, backup, preservation, sharing, responsibilities, and ethics. And that's my tour. Thanks so much for looking over my shoulder. Next slide, please, Christina. Thanks for running the engine there. All right, next slide. And then we'll be able to get some questions at the end as well, if there's anyone who wants to talk about that. So Christina's just getting back to the slides set here. Just take a moment and then back
there you go
to the demo. Yeah, thank you. All right, so here's a template that these are called exemplars. So these are actually published CEGEP data management plans that are presently being translated, and they will be available for everyone. There's going to be 2 of them that we will be able to reference and locate for everyone. So next slide, please, Christina. So then right now you have access to publicly available DMPs, and as of January 2023 we have a wonderful new college specific DMP from Fanshawe College. Take a look. I know there's a lot of great DMPs out there. We're all going to be learning and getting better at these, so please share them. So the locations will be shared within the upcoming modules that our team is working on for everyone. Next slide, please, Christina. So this now, I'm going to hand over. This is, I finished my section.
Thanks, Rose.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll take over. Thank you so much. Yeah, so again, that DMP Assistant, we've provided a link in the slides, and that's available on the Portage website. So, okay. So in workshop 1, we focused on pillar 1 of the tri-agency strategy. So we were focusing very much on the work that we're all doing, preparing for our posting of our institutional RDM strategies. And we talked about well, we tried to provide some reassurance, like the decision-making regarding the supports and the personnel that will be required. Those will evolve over time, right? We don't have to have everything in place by March 2023. So we want to do the same, have a little bit of a conversation about DMP support specifically. So we're looking at the clock. I think we do have time to use Menti for these 3 questions. Do my co-presenters agree? We'll see how it goes. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so a few questions for you to respond if you are able to do so. We would love to hear your thoughts. So focusing specifically on DMP support at your institution, we would love to hear what do you hope that DMP support might look like at your institution? This could be, your pie in the sky ideas, or you could be more of a realist. What do you hope that it might look like at your college, let's say, for instance, or your Polytechnic? So we'll be using Menti for that. So Joanna, will they?
So I've put the link to the Menti in the chat, but once Christina brings up the results slide, the code, the code is not there. Well, there's the link in the chat.
Let's just, if you have trouble accessing that Menti, just let us know in the chat, please. I'm gonna refresh this. Give me a sec. There we go. I have no idea. Access to DMP pen. That's okay. You're not supposed to. Access to DMP templates. Embed DMP education into class. Additional training. Let me refresh because I feel like this is. Yeah, there we go. Easily accessible. I don't know. I really don't know. I need help. Additional training. User friendly. Amazing. Refreshing again. One-on-one support if needed. A partnership between applied research department and librarian. Yes, please. Support for researchers, education links, recommended templates. Lots here.
Yeah, that one-on-one support if needed. That's interesting. We were having these discussions at Fanshawe. We're saying what is that going to look like? If DMPs are part of that, adjudication process, well, then will there be personnel who will actually help create DMPs or review DMPs? Or nope, sorry, we do not have the capacity for that. Researchers are going to be expected to work independently. So these, again, are conversations we're having at Fanshawe. I really don't know. I need help. Additional training.
I'll just refresh one more time.
And we are also trying to decide where that support might live, library, research office. So you'll probably need to have those conversations as well.
Agreed. Okay.
Right.
The
So we'll
other-
try, should we try again for question 2 then? The Menti
Yep.
seems to be working. Okay, great. So the next question there is, you know, again, we're thinking, a lot of folks are saying like, we might not have the capacity for this at this time, right? So if you want to get there, and again, let's say you know, you had that pie in the sky vision, what would it take for your institution to offer that DMP support? Like, do you anticipate that there might be additional personnel required? I think we mentioned in the first session, like not all colleges have librarians, maybe more data librarians are required. So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And folks did already say in question 1, maybe more training.
Refreshing. Joanna, is it the same link? Yes.
It is the same link. I had to actually click on it again to get to the new slide. I couldn't refresh to the new slide. So if you don't see a new slide or a new question, please click on the link again.
There's an interesting comment in the chat around co-authorship in the DMP.
I'm just refreshing this. Doesn't seem like we're getting any responses on it, so I'm not sure if it's just not working for people or what.
You can pop your questions in the chat if you like.
Yep, that's no problem. It's not refreshing. Okay, so just pop your questions or pop your responses into the chat. That's not a problem. Brought up the same question. I think you might have to navigate to the next slide. That's okay. Just pop them into the chat. That's fine.
And Kaylin, let's remember to answer that question about co-authorship in our question and answer period. I'm curious to hear more.
Someone said, somebody said in the chat, funding to provide supports or access to centralized supports, like a provincial expert, for example. That's a good idea. Yeah, I don't think this is working for anybody, Joanna. That's okay.
All right.
Just put them into the chat.
Yep. So last question then.
They bring up our presentations.
Yeah, we'll bring up the slides. I'll pause. There are always glitches, right?
Go.
Researchers actually asking for help with DMPs. That's a good point.
Or knowing that they can ask for help.
Yeah. Okay. So we will move on then. I'm looking at the clock. Let's move on to the final question. We're curious as well. Would you be able to identify other, like,
oh, Donna's frozen. Would you be able to identify other
external supports or options that might be available to you? So this could be, you know, just an interim solution, or again, if you plan to not support DMP at your institution, maybe this might be, you know, a long-term solution for you. Look elsewhere. These could be resources. These could be tools. Are you aware of any that you can identify for us all?
You can pop that into the chat function too, folks.
I'm going to mute my mic because I've got my neighbor snow blowing.
So are there any other external supports or options available to you that you can think of in the interim or long term?
Christina, can you move the slide to the current question?
It's at the bottom of the conversation starters. Is it not on there on slide 29?
I see.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Someone says I lean on U of T online training a lot.
We've heard as well of collaborations, college university collaborations. They tap their university colleagues at this point for assistance, you know.
Collaborating with REBs, REB Committee for Resources, and collaborating with other PSEs. So that was, Cheryl posted a really good one.
I'll just add that I sit on the REB board at Centennial, and it's a discussion, I think, in REBs across Canada, what to do with the DMPs and what their role will be with DMP. But certainly a lot of the questions are very similar, what's on the DMP and what the REBs get in their application. So I think that's a really good suggestion. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great. So again, these, just ruminate on these. Perhaps you might take these questions to your RDM partners at your institution. So give these consideration when, if you are still working on your RDM strategy, drafting it, or again, you have to figure out that roadmap, right? Where are you going? Where do you plan to get to? So let's move on. All right, so here we are. So as I said, we did build in time for other questions.
If you have a question, you can definitely type it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. We're happy to take questions that way as well. Exemplars or data management plans to explore would be wonderful for projects of varying scale and size. That's a comment that came in. Any questions, folks? Anything that you need clarified?
There was a question earlier on during Rose's section about becoming an administrator, and I think we answered it, but I just wanted to double check with Rose. To become an administrator, you just have to contact DMP Assistant and say, I want to be an administrator, and add my college's name to that list.
Exactly. Thanks, Joanna.
And they provide guidance as well on how to, again, add your institutional branding and so on. They were very helpful.
Also really great sort of email help as well. Lots of support.
Any questions, folks, before we move forward?
Did we want to address the question about co-authorship of DMPs? What was that question?
It was a comment more, but let me just go back up and see if I can find it. Had an interesting conversation with someone about whether helping to write a DMP could lead to getting co-authorship on related papers. So it's an interesting comment.
Do you want me to address this one?
You can add some comments to it.
Yeah, so I just want to, there are some excellent resources on the definition of co-authorship. So that I would definitely put in our module resources. And there's a decision process on the weight and the amount of work that you do to be part of that research project. So that's a great question. Thanks.
I'll just add my 2 cents as well. Fanshawe, like when we have research collaborations and so on, where folks are working with librarians or again, just one another across departments, we always encourage them to, at the very least, have conversations about attribution. So again, have those conversations.
And in terms of co-authorship, I'll just add in that what I've seen happen and actually have experienced is that you have very open-ended conversations within the project itself. In terms of who will get what attributions and where. So when it comes time to manuscript publications, for example, or conference proceedings, as a result of that, that you have agreements in place, and that tends to be a very standard practice within post-secondary institutions, mainly universities that I've seen, but I've seen it slowly come into the college sector as well. Will you cover best practices regarding storage of confidential data and applied research projects with industry? That's a question.
I think we're covering that in our 3rd presentation.
We are.
Yeah.
So yes, we will, but not today.
Not today.
In February.
Stay tuned. February 24th, I believe, but we'll be sending registration information on that. Susan Shepley just shared a list of exemplars for various disciplines. Thanks, Susan, for doing that. That's on the Alliance website. Note, folks, that the Alliance website has a ton of resources. I encourage you to go there. I know it's a mess, a rabbit hole of things, but if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to anyone here to help navigate some of that as well. And your librarians, they're wonderful folks. Any other questions? No, should we move? Oh, can you please further describe the administrator feature of the DMP Assistant? Is that necessary, and what does that role entail?
I'll answer that. Again, because not all of the colleges, the Polytechnic and the CEGEPs are in there, that can take a lot of time. Just go in as other institution. Once you have your administrator, then things, all these DMPs can be shifted over. All right, so please don't wait for that. Just go ahead and do your, just make yourself very familiar with that DMP Assistant, please.
And I think I know, Joanna, you mentioned you're an administrator, and I am for my college as well. So we can probably speak a little bit. Oh, yes. So we're all administrators, and can speak a little bit to what we do around that. If anyone has any specific questions, as I think Joanna mentioned, maybe Donnie, you did as well. It's not a very labor-intensive process being the administrator.
Maybe, Kaylin, what would be best answered is like, who is the appropriate person to be an administrator from your institution? Like, is it somebody from the research office? Is it the librarian? Is that maybe a question you pose?
Yeah, that would be something you could consider with your own institution. Joanna and I are both librarians, and we're administrators. Donna, you're with the research office and
the research office. Yep.
Often it's a librarian, but again, it's with your own context, something to consider.
And I think,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it ends up with the library because it looks like a database. It's you know, it's an online tool, and we're naturally the ones who get to administer those things. But no, I think the research office is possibly a more appropriate place for it. But yeah, it can be anyone at the institution, whoever's willing to take it on.
So the question,
and it's not necessary.
So the question came in: do administrators approve DMPs? No. We just gather them, basically, right?
Yeah, and then there's more things
go ahead, Kaylin. Sorry.
You can do as an administrator, depending on where you are and sort of what your time frame is and resources available. You can like create a branded version. You can do sort of context specific templates to your institutions. You can customize it a lot, which is really neat, but you don't have to do that. But the administrator role often does a lot of that customization, and the administrator can also see all of the DMPs that have been created affiliated with that institution. There's no sort of approval or review process unless you would like to activate that feature. So it can be really customized based on what you'd like to do at your own institution, and that can also change over time as you have different needs.
Great. Any other questions? Should we move on to the audience feedback, folks?
Can I just add one more thing about, so at Fanshawe, I will say that as the administrator, I'm really trying to encourage folks to, build data management plans. We've made it a requirement for internal funding, emphasizing that we're here to provide guidance and support. And so at this stage, what that looks like is folks basically invite me as a collaborator. They invite me to view their DMP. I'm happy to pop in there. And I add comments and make suggestions, but definitely do not approve DMPs. Like I'm not at that. I would not say I would be willing to take that on. So again, we are providing guidance and advice, and we are seeing this as kind of like a practice phase, anticipating if and when DMPs will be a requirement, according to, Tri-Agency for additional grants that are probably more relevant to our college researchers.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to audience feedback then. Okay, so just go to, sorry, my apologies. This is a poll for all of you. So perhaps in the chat function, if you could identify one idea from this session that you've gained that you could apply to your own institution. That provides us with helpful feedback as to if you've retained anything or learned anything from this session that you can perhaps bring back or work with at least, or toy with in your minds. Please put that in. And then I'm going to put in the plug that we have a workshop number 3 coming on in February. I think it's February 24th, but please don't take my word for it. The registration will come out, I promise you, at some point. I'm hoping next week. So do you plan to attend the data deposit, or workshop number 3 next month? Awesome. So it looks like yes, 87% of you. Some are saying maybe. Great. Okay, I'm just
And
going
yes,
back
it is February 24th. You were right, Christina.
Oh, good memory today, apparently. I couldn't remember
At 12
anybody's name
o'clock.
today. Okay, so lots of comments coming in. The walk through the DMP Assistant was very helpful. I agree. And that will be available. Again, we are creating modules as a result of the funding that we received. One of them will be looking at data management planning, the other one on data depositing. We hope to have those out to you sometime in the spring and available for use and for training purposes. This is the purpose of all of this, is not just to train you folks or to provide some learning opportunities, but to train people within your own institutions. Looking at the comments. Lovely. Looking forward to seeing the college-focused DMP described earlier in the session. Agreed, that will be coming out. It also helped articulate questions about building data management plan capacity internally, like who, what, where, how. Love that. Helpful to learn about the DMP Assistant, and you've already emailed your administrator. Fantastic. It was a refresher. Anything else? Donna, do you want to comment on any of the other things that we're creating?
I'd like to comment on your fantastic job juggling so many different tasks during this session. So thank you, Christina. That was great.
Yeah.
And we are working on a toolkit of college-specific resources. So Donna is being very kind, by the way, in terms of templates, exemplars, etc. So those will be coming available as well, we hope by the spring. So stay tuned, more to come. And if you do have any ideas of further training that's required, please send them to your HAR representative, your head of applied research, or the community of practice person for your institution. Or you can just send it to me, and I will take those to note. Noting that Compute Ontario is looking for ways to provide training opportunities to colleges, and are looking for college representatives both on their research data management group, and I'm part of their training advisory committee. So anything you send me in terms of suggestions or ideas is well worth it, and I take it right to that training advisory committee. Awesome. Okay, I think that's it for today.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.